everyone. It's the Savvy Sales Lady live with Wes Wyatt. And we have a special guest coming up. And you'll probably see how familiar he looks to you. But Wes, what is new in your world before we bring out our guest?
I have 2 kids in college, so it's spring break, and there's a lot of extra people around right now. So right now, what's new in my world is kids, and they're not away at school, so it's just a little bit kookier around here than it normally is.
Well, as you all know, I have a new grandson in my life, and so right now that has been occupying my world a little bit. But let's bring on our new guest and let's hit that bumper, Wes.
All right.
The peak performance mindset. Look at all. Getting ready to present at Getting ready to start the peak performance. Hey, Simon White, all the way from the UK.
An absolute pleasure, Christine. Lovely to see you again. Yeah, 6 o'clock in the UK right now in the evening. So yeah, lovely to see you again.
Oh my gosh. Well, I thank you so much for being on, Simon. It's been over a year since you and I did our last video together, and we've never done anything live. So thankfully with Wes, we can do something live this time.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, very exciting to do it live.
Well, we are going to talk about prospecting, everyone, because Simon is an expert about every area of sales, but he particularly likes prospecting the best because he's good at it. And I don't know, Wes, were you able to get up that graphic by chance? If not,
the graphic is still giving us some issues, guys. This is not Christine. This is the platform that we're on. So I do apologize. We don't have it, but carry on.
All righty. I'll just read it. So Simon and I happened to comment on the same post on LinkedIn. And what I had sent Wes was a screenshot of that photo and of the post. And it says the ABCs of sales: always be closing. Then in big letters, not. They're saying the new ABCs of sales are authenticity, building relationships, creating value. Sales is no longer just about closing deals. It's about building trust, rapport, and adding value for your clients. It's not about being a partner. It's about being a partner in their success, not just a vendor. Well, Simon and I hopped on and said almost the exact same thing. And Simon, I'm going to let you talk about what you said on that post, because it is essential and crucial if you want to make money.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I would say that I don't disagree with what they say, about adding value and all the rest. But I would say this: sales is always going to be about closing. Because if you don't close, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay your bills, and you can't help your new client if you can't secure that win. Now, ABC, as in always be closing, back in the day meant go for the jugular. Do you want it or not? Do you want it today? That high pressured sales. And it doesn't really mean that nowadays. What it really means is always be confirming the next step. So from that first phone call, maybe you're agreeing the meeting, from the meeting to the demo, you are taking them through that process, that buying process for them, or the sales process for you. And there's an acronym that I love as well. It's for the ABC: assume nothing, believe no one, confirm everything.
Oh, I love that, Simon. Say that again.
Assume nothing, believe no one, confirm everything. And I'd love to say where I learned that from. I can't remember, so it's not mine. Credit to whichever clever person came up with it. But it's very, very true. But for me, always be closing means just be closing or be confirming the next steps in the process, whatever they are in your own business.
Well, the ABCs of sales came from that movie. Is it Glengarry, Glenn Ross? Is that the name of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross, the most depressing an
Oh
hour and
my
20 minutes you ever in your life watch. I always say to my delegates on courses, I mention the film when I'm talking about closing, and I mention the film, and I say that it was a play and it was a film. It's really well acted, very famous stars in it, and it's a very good film. But I do find it depressing. I mean, it's set at night time. The rain's pouring down. They're up against their targets. Oh my goodness, not the fun side of sales.
Well, here's the funny part. Yesterday, I went on to find clips of Glengarry Glen Ross to show on our live. What we were talking about, but I couldn't find one that didn't have a cuss word in every other. I mean, it's
Yeah,
riveted with cuss words and f bombs and things like that.
yeah.
But back in the day, Simon, I sat through with a bunch of other salespeople a scolding and a rip like that when I was selling at Mutual of Omaha. Our general manager came through and would sit us all down every week and just rip us to threads. Like that's going to be motivating. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the ABCs of selling, and I think you said it earlier when we were in the green room that closing is not a dirty word.
No. It shouldn't be a dirty word, because if you've identified that your prospect has a pain that you can help solve, and they want to solve it, and they can afford to do so, and you can genuinely help them, then it's your duty to help them. So by doing that, you're just agreeing their next step. I mean, closing is no different than asking somebody to marry you. You're just asking for that commitment, whatever that is.
That's right. And in his post, always be closing, not the new ABCs of sales are authenticity, building relationships, creating value. Yes, those are all essential part of the selling process, but those alone will not close the deal. I mean, deals don't close on their own. They just don't magically close, do they, Simon?
No, I mean, you're taking the prospect on a journey, and closing is often wrongly taught as that last part of the process, where actually closing is a process itself throughout the whole sales cycle. So you're trial closing at specific times, you're qualifying correctly, because obviously if you haven't qualified the opportunity, you're not going to close it. Often people misdiagnose a problem with closing when actually it's a problem with not qualifying hard enough. But you're doing it throughout that whole process. So when you get to the end and you've collaborated on a solution, or even if it's a short sales cycle and you haven't had to do that part, it is simply a case of, hopefully you've got to the point where it just makes sense to move forward. If you have to put someone's arm around their back and put a lot of pressure on them and tell them that they've got to buy by the end of the day because that's what your manager is going to give them a discount and all that horrible stuff, then that's not really, certainly not B2B selling as we understand it.
Right. That's exactly right. When I'm in the process of closing a deal for my business, a savvy sales lady, and we've got an appointment set up for tomorrow to finalize everything. Well, last week, when we talked last week, I said to him, what day next week would be a good day for you that we can finalize the deal? And he on the phone, we were talking, and he said, I knew you were going to ask me that. You always schedule the follow-up.
100%. I years ago, I was doing some training with a company, and it was the first day of the training, and I was packing my laptop up at the end of the day, and I turned to my client, Harvey, and I said, Harvey, I know you spoke to lots of other sales trainers. Why did you choose me? And he goes, oh, that was easy. You did something that no one else did. And I was like, wow, this is going to be a moment to find out, what did I do that none of my peers did? And he said, well, you all said pretty much the same stuff. You all priced it in pretty much the same way. So there's nothing really to separate you. But you did something that none of the other sales trainers, remember, they're meant to be experts, but none of the other sales trainers did. He said, at the end of our conversation, you made sure that we agreed the next time we were going to speak, and you put it in the diary there and then and sent me a calendar invite. He said, all of your competitors or the other sales trainers all said things like, I'll send you a proposal, get back to me with any questions you might have. I'll send you a proposal, I'll give you a call back next week. I'll send you a proposal, I'll phone you in a few days. I said, I'll happily send you that proposal. When are we going to speak next? How about Monday at 2 or whatever the exact wording was? And it was put in the diary. We never had that phone call because on the Monday morning, he came back to me and confirmed that I was going ahead with them. And what a wonderful client, because we did the training on the Thursday. On the Saturday morning, I had my first referral from them. Within 2 weeks, I'd had 2 other referrals, ended up working for 3 companies in their same city, all within a few weeks of each other. But anyway, as an aside, but yeah, just agreeing the next step, putting it in the diary, sending the calendar invite, and ideally sending the calendar invitation whilst you're on the phone with them. So rather than them ignoring it or it gets lost in their inbox, saying, let me take your email address, I'll send it to you now. Let me know when you've got it. Okay, you've got it. That's great. Do it all there and then if you can.
I totally agree with that. I confirm it too while they've on the phone to make sure, first of all, that I did put the email address down right.
Yeah.
But second of all, just take care of it while you've got the chance.
Yeah.
Simon, why do you think salespeople hesitate about doing this?
It's the way we've all been brought up. We fear the first word we learn as children is the word no. No, don't touch the fire. No, don't do this. And we fear the word no. We fear rejection. And that is part of it, because what if they say no? Well, actually, if you've done everything else correctly, you should have a pretty good idea whether they're going to go ahead. And if you're not sure, and if you think it's a 50-50 chance, maybe you're asking for the close too early. It's like getting married. You wouldn't, second date or something, you wouldn't ask them then because you'd know it was too early. But after you've been, maybe you're living with them for a while or whatever, maybe you thought the chances of them saying yes was 99.9%. It's the same in sales. If you ask too early, then there's a general tempo to a sale, and you know when the timing's right. But you don't have to close directly. There is the direct close. Would you like to go ahead if you wanted to say something like that? But there are lots more lighter ways of doing it. And I can't remember the chap's name. I think his name might be James Muir. I can't remember, but I think he has a close in his book, and this is one that I tend to favor personally in my own business. It's simply this. Based on what you've told me today, the next step will be X. How does that sound? So based on what you've told me today, the next step will be to draw up the paperwork. How does that sound? Or arrange the demo or whatever it might be. How does that sound? And if they say yes, or give a positive response, perfect, brilliant, you've closed the deal. If they say anything negative, you can say, well, okay, what would you suggest we do as a next step? So that's a really light way of closing, but as opposed to the cut and thrust of the 1980s where it was going for the jugular. Do you want it or not then? Are we going to get this? Just based on what you've told me or based on what we've discussed, the next step will be X. How does that sound? So there's lots of ways of closing. I mean, you go into Amazon books and find 10,000 books on how to close. Most of them are just repeating the same stuff over and over again. But there are some nice closes that just take a little bit of that resistance away, a little bit of that anxiety-inducing moment away from people.
Well, and even if you do get a no, Simon, or now you know this to be true, folks, you can sense hesitancy. And if you sense hesitancy, just ask them. I sense there's a little hesitancy on your part. Would you explain what it is that you feel uncomfortable with? Or would you explain exactly what you're hesitating to? I mean, get the elephant out in the room, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If there's an elephant in the room, you might as well just identify it and say it seems like, or it feels like, or
Mhm.
whatever. Absolutely. But don't close until you've. Here's the analogy I kind of use, and I'm not sure whether it's a good one or not, but it's one I use a lot in training. Imagine you're walking down a corridor, like a hotel corridor or something, and you've got all the doors, and all the bedroom doors are open. So as someone raises an objection or you're moving through the process, you're shutting a door behind you. And when you get to the end of that corridor, you need to turn around. Have you closed all of those doors? And if you have, now you can close the deal. But if there's a couple of doors still ajar or one swinging open in the wind, you know now you're risking not going to close the deal. Every element has to be checked off in terms of qualifying. Yeah, do you know what their pain is? Do you know their buying process? Do you know who else is involved in it? Do you know their timescales? Do you know what other initiatives might be trying to get the same budget, etc.? You know, those could be 10 things, could be 20 things. Do you know the answers to those? And if you do, and they truly believe as well that you can solve their problem, now you're in a position to close, but don't close prematurely.
I love the door analogy, Simon. May I use that and then credit you to the door analogy?
Please do. It came out of my head. Most of the stuff I'm released come out of my place, but that one came out of my head. And as I'm telling it, I'm thinking, have you ever seen the film The Shining? And that's not a very nice film,
Oh,
is it? But I always think of that corridor scene. That's where when I'm talking about it, I'm always thinking of that scene. I don't know why. I didn't even like the film. I don't even think I saw the whole thing. But yeah, that's that scene, that corridor. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
great,
because
great.
there is an older style of selling where people go, well, if someone raises an objection, ignore it and all that kind of stuff. Well, no, you know, that door is going to swing and it will come back and bite you at some point if you haven't dealt with it properly.
Well, and if you've done your research and have had deep conversations with the prospect, a lot of times you know what those objections could possibly be. And
Yeah,
so those are things that I always say don't overcome objections, manage the objections,
yeah.
get it out. And you bring the objections up and get it out as a salesperson, and don't wait for the prospect to do that.
Absolutely. I say again, I'm not sure where this came from, but when's the best time to diffuse a bomb? Before it goes bang.
Yeah,
So yeah, so exactly what you said. Yeah, you deal with it before they raise it, and
yeah,
it just takes the wind out of their sails. It just takes that pressure off, and that's the same on a cold call or something. So if you know you're always going to get hit by a certain objection on the cold call, every prospect saying exactly the same thing, well, raise it as part of your opener. You know,
yeah.
typically
That's
when I speak
exactly
to
right.
typically when I speak to a sales director like yourself, they often tell me X, Y, or Z. Just raise it. You know, they might, and then you've dealt with it. It might come back, but you've certainly taken the pressure off it.
One of the openers I use when I cold call, Simon, um, and I have yet to have someone tell me yes. I'll say, this is Christine Harrington, the savvy sales lady. Hi, Jen. How are you? Is this a bad time to talk? And I have never yet had anyone say to me, no, or yes, it is a bad time to talk. They'll say, no, I've got a few minutes. Or they'll say, I am headed into a meeting. When can you call me back later today or tomorrow? And every time I have set that up with them before I hang up, they're there waiting when I call.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
wasn't a brush off, it was an actual, they agreed to talk to me.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. You could give that same opener script to somebody else, and it wouldn't work. But because and the reason it wouldn't work for some, but it works for you, is because of your tone of voice, the speed. You speak nice and slowly and very. Someone else, a young salesperson who's maybe nervous, might say it far too quickly, and they might get a brush off. So it's interesting how it's not just the words; it's the tone and the pace and the volume all make a massive difference.
That is a really good point you make, because one of the keys that I teach when cold calling is take a deep breath before you make that call. You want to project your voice from the diaphragm so you sound confident
Yes.
in what you're saying, and not kind of a weak position call.
Yeah.
So, Simon, my gosh, I could talk to you forever. Can you believe we've already blown through 20 minutes?
My goodness, it just fly by, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And I always try to keep my live short, because I know that people are, some that would be watching from work. So I want to keep it short. And I started doing them during the lunchtime hour, but we had to move them to 2 o'clock. So they can watch the replays, though, all day long. They can watch the replays. Simon, will you come back?
Definitely. I think we've just touched the surface on this topic. So definitely, yeah.
Do you have any parting words?
I think the key part of prospecting or anything to do with sales is to plan what you're going to do. Understand the problems you solve, understand the audience, understand all of that. And there's a lovely quote: if you don't have a plan, you can only react. And when you're reacting, you're not in control.
There you go. There you go. That is wise words. Well, everyone, you know how I end, and that is, remember this: sales is a journey, not a quick trip around the block. We'll see you next Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, Simon. It's just so good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.